Welcome to another community conversation. I'm your host, Ian Parkinson, and I'm very happy today to have with me the Chief Archivist of the Archives of City Medicine Hat at the Esplanade, Philip Pype. Welcome, Philip.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So the archives are in the Esplanade.
Yes.
Access to them is through your staff on the main floor.
Yes. Yeah. So the archives at the Esplanade are within the gallery area, which is a great thing because it means we're very accessible. Often archives are put into basements, which isn't ideal, or out into industrial areas, but we're very fortunate to be on the main floor of a prominent building here in Medicine Hat. So
it's a very well-lit, welcoming area.
Yeah, and that was very, very intentional, and that's developed over time.
Yeah.
When we first moved into the Esplanade back in 2005, it's taupe walls, some bookshelves, concrete floor, so adding some color to the space, making sure that as soon as people walk through the door, they see a smiling face, that there's welcoming signage and everything like that. Helps put people at ease because the process of doing research can be potentially intimidating if it's something you haven't done before, or feeling like you can ask questions or express yourself.
Well, I have to admit, it is a very welcome, because I've gone into your archive entrance and worked with Jennifer.
Yes.
And just gone in there and said, "Hi, I'm so-and-so. I'm really interested in this segment of one club's history in Medicine Hat, and I'd like to find out how far back it goes. How do I start?"
Yes.
And you guys were just, "Here you go. This is," and laid it all out.
Yeah. By doing that, you opened the door to that essential conversation. As when a researcher comes through the door, we do basically, we call it a reference interview, but it's a lot, we hope we present it as a lot more casual than that. We have a conversation. What sort of information are you looking for? What kind of project are you working on? And that way we can work with you as a researcher to figure out what kind of records you might be interested in, and have that really start that conversation. And as you work with materials, work with records, we pull them out of the back once we figure out what would be helpful. And certainly we're set up in such a way that you can be sitting at a table and ask questions as you're going along, or like, "Oh, this is an interesting book. Do you know how this works? Or do you know what this abbreviation means?" Or, any of those sorts of questions.
I did enjoy my time with the archives to the point where that's why I joined the Heritage Resources Working Group, because it is a very interesting area. But we were talking earlier, you've had international researchers come through your archive.
Yes. We do get international visitors, and we do get a lot of emails and phone calls from abroad as well. Certainly, the internet helps out with that, and having an online catalog, not just for the archives, but also for artifact collections with the museum and our artworks as well. So people are able to discover us that way. Another way people discover us is they're doing their research, whether it's in Germany or in Great Britain or somewhere in the United States, for example, and they find some family connection to Medicine Hat, or they remember Granddad talking about being a prisoner at the POW camp during the Second World War that was here at the Stampede, where the Stampede grounds are. And so they contact us, or they go online and find, "Oh, there's an archives in Medicine Hat, and there's a museum," and they email us or pick up the phone, and we start a relationship, a rapport. and often they'll make a trip to, halfway across the planet, and with the idea of coming to the archives.
It is nice to touch the actual documents or ledgers or diaries or photographs. I mean, online is okay, but to actually be sat down and see your grandfather as a teenager in a POW camp.
Yeah, absolutely. It's being able to, the tangible, to be able to handle the, like you said, the original journal, or the original artwork in some cases, or the smell, or like we'll get people whose families either settled here or attempted to settle here and farm, and are looking for where that quarter section exactly was, and they want to come to the archives, figure that out, get some help to figure out where exactly that quarter section was, and go see that physical place as well. So
and it's like you say, I mean, even if you're curious, it doesn't matter if it's a street, a building, a bridge, a road, a farm, anything. If you're curious, phone the archives and say, hey, I'd like to look into this. How do I go about it?
And sometimes we also get some academic researchers who are doing things like working on PhD dissertations, who are interested in for example, the manufacturing in Medicine Hat, or environmental studies, or cultural studies of some sort or another, and discover online that, you have the records of Dr. Bennett, who is an anthropologist who worked in Southwest Saskatchewan. Like, I want to access those records, or the records from a particular artist or artisan, or they're interested in different organizations or families. So that's always...
So it's a busy place.
It is a very busy place. There are days where you think of the Esplanade, and you think of when the Esplanade's busy. We have a theater there, we have galleries and things like that. There are days where the archives reading room is probably the busiest place in the building, because people are coming and going, or doing research, or popping their heads in because they were in the galleries and have a question and want to look a little further into, like, I see you got this Alta Glass case, and I'm really interested in glass works, and we've got the records of Alta Glass, so they want to dive in deeper, things like that too. So
are the archives, the locations, are you all tied together somehow?
We are informally. We're a member of the Archive Society of Alberta, as well as the Association of Canadian Archivists. So every archive's kind of, we've got our rules and professional standards and guidelines, and lean on each other for resources. Okay, how do you do this? Go to a conference, go to a workshop, send out an email on a listserv, and find out, okay, somebody else has had this challenge before. This is how they solved it, which is great. And there are some resources, like we participate in Alberta on Record through the Archive Society of Alberta, so a lot of our collection descriptions are on there as well. So sometimes people discover us that way, but it's not like, you don't have a clearinghouse. We don't have a clearinghouse. We don't have a franchise, but it's about relationships. We meet people at workshops and conferences, or put the message out on the listserv and say, or somebody contacts us and say, okay, I'm in Foremost, and I'm looking for where the best place for my family's history is. And I'm like, we might say, well, there's a historical society in Foremost, but there's also an archives in Lethbridge. So, that's more their area.
So if a family is looking to I don't know, safely donate, for a better word, their family history, just give the archives a call. Hey,
Yeah.
we've got this. What do you want to...
Yeah, and we take the process from there, whether they walk through the door completely unexpected, or pick up the phone, or send us an email, and we'll have a conversation about what the materials is, what they're looking at potentially
Right.
donating, what may be historically significant, and we'll have some opinion. We have limited resources,
Yeah.
so what do we take? What do we not take? Do we want the photo album of the family business downtown Medicine Hat in the 1930s? Absolutely. The family vacation to Hawaii? Not so much. So we have those conversations. And there might be records in those boxes that I might not immediately see the value of. Well, what's this about? This doesn't look like it's very significant, and it's like, well, that's the first birthday card my grandfather received after he immigrated to Canada, or something like that. And suddenly
All of a
that
sudden, this history...
mundane object
Yeah.
becomes, or the mundane piece of paper becomes something very significant. So we like to work with people who are looking to donate. It's a very collaborative
Yeah.
effort, although some people run and dump.
Yeah, sadly.
It's or it's too painful, or they're just not interested, or they don't understand why we're as interested in the material, but they also don't want to throw it away.
Yeah.
So, we work through the process and have a lot of conversations, if possible.
Yeah.
About
If you're not sure, call the archive, just in case it's valuable.
yeah, and
Historically.
historically valuable. Yeah, value is a
That's a flexible term.
it's historically valuable, and we're constantly also growing and redefining what's valuable.
Yeah.
Archives tend to reflect the archivist and the decisions that we made and the people who created the archives.
Yeah.
So archives, if we're not careful, can be very mono,
Yes.
upper middle class, white male. The archive collections often look like me.
Yes.
like
both of us.
So we want to engage other aspects of the community, whether it's a cultural group, whether it's women's organizations, etc. So that whether it's more recent immigration groups who've become part of the Medicine Hat community, we want to be representative in what we have and who we serve.
Well, I certainly appreciate your staff and your archives, because this was quite a few years ago. I was looking for the original logo for the Medicine Hat Rifle Revolver Club.
Okay.
And spoke with Jennifer at the counter, and then we kind of got into this. And the next thing I know, I've got the minutes from the Medicine Hat Rifle Club from 1899 who want to contact the local RCM Northwest Mounted Police Inspector at Police Point. Yeah. Can we borrow your rifles and use your range?
So
it's like, I didn't see that coming.
Yeah, that's what we call a rabbit hole. I mean, it's Alice in Wonderland down the, through the looking glass. You come in looking for one thing, you find another lead, and as staff, that's one of our biggest risks, is we get impassioned about people's research and history and what people discover, and concepts that we haven't really learned about before. So
yeah, and it's not just you and Jennifer that work in the archives. You've got volunteers as well, I believe.
Yeah, we have a great group of volunteers. Our volunteers tend to find their way to the archives. We have a volunteer recruiting process, but our volunteers tend to stay with us for years and years, and build their skills and bring their skills, and we find the projects that we need to get done that as staff we would never be able to do, or volunteers are able to kind of do that value added piece to it, using their skills, using their interests, and their skills grow as well as they go along. So for example, we have one volunteer who is an absolutely fantastic researcher, and it's taken probably 10 years of volunteering with us to get to that level, so.
Yeah, because so your volunteers are actually doing research within the archives for somebody else who needs the research. Or is this just their own interest?
For example, having a volunteer doing some research, is just one example of a task that a volunteer might do. And he does research kind of for things we see potentially coming up in the future. Like if we know that an institution in the community is turning 50 years old or 100 years old in the next 2 or 3 years.
Yes.
It's kind of like, well, could you start going through newspapers and our records and seeing what we have, because it'd be likely that they might want to celebrate their history, and even if they don't, then we've got kind of a quick access file that we can pull out if somebody comes in and says, hey, I'm interested in St. John's Presbyterian Church, and be like, well, here you go. Here's 100 pages of newspaper articles and other materials that our volunteer found. We have other volunteers who do things like we were donated a collection of thousands of portraits. And they need to be, the easiest way to access them is if they're in alphabetical order, and they're kind of in order, kind of not in order, but it's a lot of work to go through and put thousands of photographs in alphabetical order, like the names are on the envelopes. So having a volunteer, if that's the level they're wanting to work at, and they just want something to occupy their time, that's great. We have another volunteer we're working on setting up who is looking to transcribe some oral histories for us, because he has impaired vision. Audio is something that he can work with. So working to get him set up on doing a project like that, so that if somebody is interested in an oral history and we have a full transcription we can provide, that's a great asset. Or if we can do a word search, or search for a particular term or concept, having it typed out makes it that much more accessible. So our volunteers do a variety of different things that meet their needs, that meet our needs, that are things that we just, as two staff, we could not get to. So
if you're interested, don't be shy. Ask.
Yeah, ask. We'll direct you to, we have a volunteer coordinator. Another great thing about being in the Esplanade, if we were a standalone just archives program out in a light industrial park somewhere, we wouldn't have a volunteer coordinator, but we have a volunteer coordinator because the Esplanade has somewhere in the range of 200 active volunteers, so we're able to tap into that wonderful resource.
It is a beautiful facility. I mean, you've got theater, you've got the rehearsal hall, you've got the archive, you've got the gallery, and then you've got the meeting rooms upstairs as well. I mean, it's a beautiful facility.
It is, and it was an excellent accomplishment to have it built downtown, and we're across the street from the library, so there's some crossover there. we sometimes send people towards the library. The library sends people towards us.
Yeah, you did that with me.
Yeah, because we have different resources, different
Yep.
different knowledge, or somebody will go to the library because they're not familiar with the concept of archives, or even or know that we have an archives program
Yeah.
across the street, and so their reference services might say, well, you might want to talk to Philip or Jenny over at the archives, and we can.
Welcome to the rabbit hole.
Yeah, welcome to the rabbit hole. Yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like to add, Philip?
I think, one of the jokes, I use the term joke lightly, that I hear, more often than any other is like, hey, Philip, what's new at the archives? I mean, what's old at the archives? Ha, ha, ha. And, in archives, first of all, we think long-term, so we're thinking towards the future as much as we're thinking towards the past.
Yes, because, yeah, you're right. You're very forward-thinking for what a lot of people think is the past.
Yeah, we want to not only collect and preserve those records, whether they're letters or photographs or audiovisual recordings, not just for this generation, but we hope that this collection is there and accessible and growing generations from now.
Yeah.
Whether that is through an archives reading room. Online certainly is a big part of what we do. We talked about people finding us from all over the world,
Yeah.
or accessing collections. Or to things like investigating technology, like how does artificial intelligence impact archival work? I honestly don't think it'll ever take over our jobs, because so much of what I talked about today is about personal relationships. Yes. And building trust and things like that. I don't think archives will turn into just a big search engine.
Yeah, to a degree, archivists are also interpreters, because I may use a term, my granddad was here sometime towards the end of the Second World War, but then he came home. Like, was he a farmer or a rancher? You go, what country are you from? Well, I'm from Italy. Well, he was probably a prisoner of war. Huh? Like, 'cause there's that terminology. You've got to be flexible.
Yeah, flexible, and we're always building knowledge, and we often think of archives. People come to the archives to learn, but we're constantly learning ourselves in archives. I've been very fortunate to get to work with the same collection and work on building it for over 20 years now. So there are parts of that collection I know very thoroughly, in depth, although I put my own interpretation on it. And when somebody comes through the door or sends us an email or picks up the phone and gives us a call, they often will be asking a question we never conceived of. Yeah. And we're left having a conversation. Jenny, I'll go to Jenny's desk and be like how are we gonna, I know this information must be somewhere. Like, how can we help this person? And we're like, that kind of information is in the old tax rolls, actually. I never thought of using the tax rolls that way. Or well, have you thought of looking in, city minute books that we have? Or have we thought of looking in, at photographs? There might be some detail, or any number of those things. And again, one of the great things about having such a long-standing volunteer corps is, if somebody has a question and relates to engineering, we've got a retired engineer who's been volunteering with us for 20 years.
It's silly.
It's well, they're asking about irrigation systems. Like, Alan, what do you know about irrigation systems? And he'll, he might help guide us through it. That sort of thing. So it's a lot of conversations, a lot of learning.
A lot of, I would imagine a lot of pondering too, like, okay, where do we go next?
Yeah, sometimes it'll be the next day, or it'll be, one of those 2 o'clock in the morning thoughts. Oh, I know, they should look at,
Yes.
and I try to behave myself and not, pick up my phone and like email myself at work, say, look in the, look in these directories, or look in these records, or do a search here or there, so.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming in, Philip. Good luck with the archives. If you have any interesting artifacts, you're certainly welcome to come back and speak to us on it.
Okay, absolutely. I'm always willing to make the trip over and to have further conversations, because I love talking about what I do.
Yes, and it's obvious.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, Philip.
Thanks, Ian.
Thank you for watching.